The house didn't look like much from the outside. At least, not from where our tour started. But I'd seen aerial pictures of the sprawling property known as the Winchester Mystery House. It looked from the top as if several cramped and poorly designed homes had been shoved together to make one massive, cluttered home. And that wasn't far from the truth. While there had once been a portion of the house that was 7 stories, there were now only 4, thanks to the Great San Francisco earthquake of 1906.
There are 160 rooms,
our tour guide said as she led us into the house.
10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, 47 stairwells and fireplaces, and 6 kitchens, just to name a few oddities. The entire house is 24,000 square feet.
So far, everything was checking out. I'd done my research, and while there was plenty of spooky lore surrounding the house, I wasn't one to believe the hype. The only reason I had paid my hard-earned money to take the tour was because my sister wanted to do it for her birthday. Shelley and I were joined by a group of 6 other people on the tour, including the tour guide. There were 9 of us. We moved down a hallway in the Victorian-style house as the female tour guide continued talking.
Some people believe that the house is haunted, and that Sarah Winchester, who came into her money after marrying an heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, was haunted by the ghosts of all the spirits killed by Winchester rifles.
We moved deeper into the belly of the labyrinthian house, passing rooms of various uses that were made to look like they did in the early 1900s. The tour guide pointed out certain oddities and information plaques on the walls. The place was all browns and tans. Sure, it was strange. There were windows everywhere, even though most of them only looked into rooms. It was as if Sarah Winchester wanted windows where a normal house would have had walls. Then, our tour guide started spouting nonsense.
They say that Sarah Winchester kept building the house night and day for nearly 40 years to confuse the ghosts that haunted her. Legend has it that she slept in a different room every night in an effort to avoid the malevolent spirits.
I leaned down next to my sister.
Not true,
I said.
There's no evidence she was haunted, and she had a fascination with architecture, and had nothing to do with ghosts or spirits.
My sister shushed me, and I looked up, realizing I'd been speaking louder than I thought. The tour guide glared at me. Oops.
I'd ask that you hold all comments until the end,
she said. Unable to help myself, I said,
I'm just telling the truth. The stories about this place are all made up. It's all fabricated to sucker people into buying tickets.
My sister covered her face with her hands and groaned.
People come here to be entertained, sir,
the tour guide said.
And if you're going to keep interrupting the tour, I'll have to ask you to leave.
I looked at the other people, who were all glaring at me.
Fine,
I said, throwing up my hands.
Shelley, I'll wait for you out front. Now, how do I get the hell out of here?
The tour guide smiled.
Just follow the yellow markers on the floor. They'll guide you back the way we came.
Something about her smile gave me the creeps, but I turned and stalked off, face hot with embarrassment and anger. Eyes to the floor, I followed the yellow markers for what seemed like a long time before I stopped and looked around. I didn't recognize the area. I was still somewhere near the middle of the house, as evidenced by the fact I couldn't see outside. I continued on, slower now. The markers led me to a staircase going down, but that couldn't be right. We'd still be on the ground floor.
What the hell?
I said, turning around and going back. I turned the corner and ran into a dead end. I knew from my research that there were plenty of dead ends in the house, along with stairwells that led to nowhere, and upper-story doors that opened onto thin air. But I'd just come this way, hadn't I? Heading back the other way, I followed the markers down the stairs and found myself on the 4th story, looking out a window that had a view of the sprawling property.
This is impossible,
I said, panic starting to sink its claws into me. I opened the window and looked for a way down, but it was a sheer drop. There were no phones allowed on the tour, so Shelley and I had left ours in my car in the parking lot. I had no way to call for help. Turning back, I abandoned the markers and went down a nearby hallway, moving fast as my heart pounded. I opened every door I came to, looking into each room for an exit, but finding none. And once I came back out of the room, the layout of the house had changed. Screaming for help, I careened through the house until I ran out of energy, my stomach growling and my throat parched. Twice more I came to a window leading directly outside, but both times it was on the 4th floor, even though I'd gone down at least 6 flights of stairs. The sun was setting outside, and I leaned out the window, screaming for help. I could see the traffic passing by on the distant street, but no one appeared on the grounds below. No one came to help. I collapsed on an old bed in one of the dozens of bedrooms I'd found, weeping and gripping my growling stomach. I'd fallen into a nightmarish daze when there was a knock on the door. I jerked my head up to see the tour guide smiling at me.
Sir, your sister is waiting for you. The tour's over.
I'm sorry, I said, getting slowly off the bed, sure this was another of the house's tricks.
I'm sorry. Please, just let me go. I don't know what you're talking about,
the guide said. Her smile said otherwise. She guided me out of the house and into the afternoon sunlight. Shelley was waiting for me.
What happened? Are you okay?
She asked. What time is it? How long has it been since we last saw each other? She looked at me funny.
The tour was an hour, so, I don't know, 45 minutes maybe? What's up with you?
Nothing, I said, looking over my shoulder to see the tour guide standing at the house's entrance, still smiling.
Let's just get the hell out of here.
The Winchester house was a massive labyrinth of rooms. It was open 7 days a week during daylight hours, but when Halloween season came around, it was open well into the night. So when my cleaning company snagged the contract to clean the house, I couldn't have been happier. With dozens of tours a day, the place had to be cleaned every night. It was a lucrative contract that would help my business thrive. I said it was my business, but that's not strictly true. All the employees had a stake in the company. It was a profit share model. I was just the one who founded it. And since I did much of the back-end stuff, like securing new contracts, my slice of the pie was slightly larger than everyone else's. But I still showed up to every major job I could. And the Winchester house was a major job. The manager of the place, Letty Thurman, gave me the tour and showed me what she wanted done. She also gave me several paper maps to give to the other cleaners so we wouldn't get lost in the place. When we got back to her office, she said she was going to do some paperwork. The other Clean Life cleaning company employees were outside with the equipment, ready to get to work. We put our heads together and formulated a plan to get the place cleaned as quickly as possible. Then we got to it. I'd been at it for about an hour when I heard the screaming. I was on the 3rd floor, working to clean a long and narrow hallway, when the screaming started. It was a woman, and she was calling for help. Shutting off the hardwood floor vacuum I was using, I moved down the hall toward the sound.
Hello?
I called.
Where are you?
Get me out of here, please!
The woman called.
I'm trapped!
It sounded like she was directly behind an ornate wooden wall panel. I knew that the place had all kinds of secret passageways and sealed rooms. Passing on the wall here and there yielded no results, and still the woman screamed. There was a crack at the side of the wooden panel, where it connected with another. Peering through the crack, I saw a sliver of a woman's eye looking back at me.
Hold on,
I said.
I'll be right back. I've got a crowbar in my truck.
I ran out of the house, which was surprisingly easy given the layout. On my way, I thudded past the office where Letty Thurman was working. As I ran back in with the crowbar, she was out of her office, looking at the tool with horror.
What are you doing?
There's a woman stuck in a room up there. She must have gotten lost during the tour.
I kept moving past Letty.
Wait, Mr. Bolton!
Letty called, coming after me.
Come on!
I said.
Maybe you know how to get her out without damaging the wall.
We got back up to the 3rd floor, but the screaming had stopped.
Hello?
I called out, peering through the crack again.
It was coming from in there?
Letty asked. I nodded.
How would she have gotten in there?
She wouldn't have.
Letty answered, backing away from the area.
It's completely sealed.
Well, I heard her. I saw her. So unless you tell me how to get in there, I'm gonna have to break through this wall panel.
Letty shook her head.
No, that's not a good idea. We're never supposed to open that room.
There's a woman in there!
There's no woman in there, Mr. Bolton.
She was still backing away, white as a sheet. I shook my head and turned to the wall, jamming the tip of the crowbar in the crack. As I pulled on the tool and the wood began to crack, Letty turned and ran away. I could see the discreet nails coming out from the top and bottom of the panel, but I saw nothing but darkness inside. Suddenly, the panel crashed open. I was thrown back as a wave of bodies came pouring out of the room like an elevator full of blood opening its doors. Before I was enveloped by the bodies, I saw that many of them wore clothes from bygone eras. Some were dressed as 19th century cowboys, others as Native Americans from the same era. They were mostly men, but I noticed several women among them. They all had bullet holes in them. I was crushed under this deluge of bodies, feeling certain that I would suffocate to death, or my bones and internal organs would simply be smashed to a pulp. But then the weight disappeared from me, and I found myself in the empty hallway, breathing heavily and peering around in shock. Letty appeared at the end of the hallway.
What did you do?
She asked.
You let them out. You let them all out. Dear God, help us.
I knew the legend. After seeing all those bodies, I knew what she was talking about. Every person who'd ever been killed by a Winchester rifle. Before her death, Sarah Winchester had found a way to contain their ghosts, and I'd just let them out. As I got to my feet, the house started to shake. The sound of footsteps from the floor above made me smile and shake my head. I looked at my friend and cameraman, Lester, who was holding our Sony camera with night vision and infrared capabilities.
The manager promised me they wouldn't interfere,
I said.
It sure sounds like they're trying to influence our shoot.
Like many other paranormal content creators, we'd had our eye on the Winchester Mystery House for some time. Now that we were here and able to spend the night, I was hoping we'd see something good, something other than just the interior of a strange and massive house. But it sounded like one of the employees was still wandering around, no doubt hired to make it seem like the house was actually haunted. After all, it would make for good publicity. Of course, there were 2 security guards outside, but I'd been told they wouldn't come into the house until there was an issue.
Maybe the place is really haunted and that's a ghost,
Lester said, grinning.
Yeah, that'll be the day. No, I think I've got an idea. Let's roll with this for a while.
I cleared my throat and looked into the camera.
We're spending the night at the Winchester Mystery House, supposedly one of the most haunted places on Earth. We've only been here for an hour, but we're already hearing noises. So there's either a person in this maze of a house with us, or this place is really haunted. Let's see what we can find out.
Waving Lester after me, I started down the hall and toward one of the many stairwells in the place. The sound of a door slamming upstairs made me jump. Lester laughed behind me.
Remind me to edit that out later,
I said, chuckling. We moved up one of the long and narrow stairwells, which had 4 different landings just to go up 1 floor. Apparently, Sarah Winchester had suffered from terrible arthritis, so she had the stairs constructed to make them easier to walk up. When we got to the 3rd floor, I stepped into the hallway to see a dark figure move through the shadows at the other end of the hall. It certainly creeped me out, but it also didn't look like a ghost. It was solid, like a person wearing an all-black costume.
Your boss guaranteed the house would be empty.
I called down the hall when I knew Lester was behind me.
You can come out now.
There was no reply. We had the manager turn off most of the lights in the house to give it the ambiance we were looking for. Now, I had to resist the urge to turn them back on. I headed down the hall, Lester following with the camera. When I came to the place where I'd seen the figure disappear, I saw that there was nothing but a hallway that led to nowhere. It extended to the left, but on the right, it simply stopped after about 5 feet. Apparently, there were many places like that in the house. Stairs to nowhere, doors that opened onto the side of the house, hallways that just ended for no apparent reason. Lester grunted behind me. There were a series of thumps. I stepped out of the dead end and looked down the hall. Lester was gone. The camera was lying on the hallway floor. Then my friend stumbled out of one of the rooms along the main hall. He held his hands to his neck, both eyes bulging with panic. Blood spurted from between his fingers. As I stepped forward to help him, the dark figure emerged from the room.
Although I couldn't see his face under the cloth mask, I knew instinctively he was a man. He had a knife in his hand, which he jammed into the back of Lester's neck. He yanked the knife out of Lester and started toward me. I bolted, going left down the intersecting hallway. The man's footsteps thumped along behind me. Panicking, I turned into the first open room I found, slinging the door closed behind me. But the man was so close, he kicked the door back open before it could shut. There was another door ahead of me, the only one out of the room. I yanked it open and bolted through, seeing too late that it opened onto nothing but a 3-story drop to the ground below. There was a velvet rope strung across the doorway. I tripped over it, unable to stop my momentum. Toppling, I fell out of the doorway and slammed into a narrow awning over the second floor. Grabbing for something but finding nothing, I rolled off the awning and fell 2 stories down into a garden area, landing awkwardly on my left leg and arm in a low bush. I felt my leg snap and my wrist break at almost the same time. I cried out in pain as I rolled onto my back and saw the dark figure looking down at me from the door to nowhere. He disappeared from the doorway, and I knew he was coming to finish the job. Crawling out of the garden area, I headed for a row of hedges bordering the house across a walkway, thinking I could hide. But before I even made it across the walkway, I heard the sound of the man's footsteps. I got onto my back and looked up at him as he approached, bloody knife still in hand. As he stepped up to me, I knew there was nothing I could do. He raised the knife, and then his chest exploded in time with the sound of 3 gunshots. He stumbled, nearly stepping on me before turning around. There was a 4th gunshot, and he fell down next to me. One of the security guards stood about 20 yards away, still pointing his weapon. I realized he probably heard my scream. I found out later that the guy with the knife was a former employee at the Winchester Mystery House. We never found out why he targeted us. We certainly didn't know him. There's never any satisfactory explanation for crazy, and now Lester is gone forever. But a gun saved my life. I guess there's something to that. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.